Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Fighting Roundtable. It's been quite a while, but I'm glad to be back. And today we'll be talking about manipulation in the fighting world. So basically, people, systems, companies working behind the scenes for better or worse, affecting fighters, uh, organizations, the audience, just anything that involves like a very clear and vivid sense of manipulation. And we'll talk about the future of having such a phenomenon exist in the fighting world and point out to any relevant or past examples of thereof. So, joining me to talk about it all is Overtime Heroics MMA Zone, Sergio Pinero. So, Sergio, please introduce yourself.
I'm Sergio Pinero. I work at Overtime Heroics. I work for a couple other websites as well, and I run my own. I'm excited to be on, and we can talk about a lot of different things, I guess, around manipulation. I think this is the one of the sports where we see it, like you said, the organizations do it, different fighters do it, especially you see that more in boxing, I guess, than MMA. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited to come on and talk about it.
hmm Yeah. So yeah, the most recent example that I want to bring up is one person that everyone is talking about, Joshua Fabio. Fabio. Yeah. This guy is interesting. Yeah. Basically, he was the for people who don't know, he was the cornerman. And I say cornerman literally because he was the only person in Diego Sanchez's corner for I think three of his fights. He fought Michel Pereira. Let's see. I think he didn't fight Mike
Yeah,
Perry. Yeah,
Eric, yes, and Matthews.
yeah. So basically, uh, yeah, they were. Yeah, he was fighting them for the entire time, and Joshua was cornering him, giving really weird instructions, giving him like weird cues, not really talking about strategy, and you could clearly see it on display when Diego went in and tried to take on these fighters. He didn't have any plan going, and he was a little bit more odd, a lot more than usual, and that's saying something. So I guess what's your take on Joshua Fabian, how he's been acting in the MMA world?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one because I mean, yeah, everyone likes to have their opinion, and understandably, I mean, the guy's quite odd. He doesn't have a martial arts background, and we all love Diego Sanchez, and I think there's very few people, fans and fighters and organizations that dislike Diego Sanchez. He's just overall a great guy. He is a great fighter, and his legacy stands for itself. So Joshua Fabia came in and kind of took over Diego Sanchez and started managing him, and they developed a friendship. And I guess kind of manipulated his way into to the spotlight. It's a hard one because Diego Sanchez is an adult. He's a represent him, and yeah, it definitely is a weird one. And I know they just parted ways as well, so hopefully things will kind of normalize there. But I've talked to Joshua Fabia through DMs and
Oh,
stuff.
sorry, man. You got caught up a little bit there, like Joshua, and he's a plank, and it kind of got cut off there, or Diego, and he's a. So, repeat what you said.
Yeah, so I mean, I know Joshua Fabia. I've messaged him a few times before, and he's an overall good guy. He's a bit weird, quirky, and I really do think he means meant well for Diego.
Mm,
I think he really wanted what was best for him in terms of his health. The problem was I don't think he understood what the UFC was. The UFC is a fighting organization. Fighters sign up to get punched in the head. So when you're requesting medical records and all this stuff, it does rub the organization, does rub fans and other fighters the wrong way. And, the way he approached the commentary team that one time also was a bit much. And
mm,
I think managers especially need to know that their place is negotiate contracts.
mm,
That's it. That's your job, negotiate contracts, make sure the fighters are all taken care of, Your job isn't to go out there and ask the UFC to speak highly of your fighter and all that stuff. That's if you're not happy in the UFC, leave the UFC.
Right.
But he he made his presence known, and he wanted it to be about himself. And it sucks as a fan of Diego to see that sort of happen. But like I said, I mean, Diego's a grown adult. He can make those decisions, and he chose to have Josh represent him, and here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, he was trying to play the Don King angle a little bit too much, and I think that ultimately costed him. Especially, and I don't think it would even work with someone like Diego Sanchez, as well revered and well liked by hardcore fans as he is. So it was just a weird moment in MMA history. I don't think I can recall someone in the vast history of MMA that did it at the level of Joshua, especially as weird as he is. I can probably go towards Dana, but I mean, I think at least with his promotion, he's the president, so he's able to like be as boisterous as he can, and also big up fighters whenever he's doing ESPN interviews. So that's pretty much his job. So I guess, yeah. I mean, how would you compare it? I mean, I guess have you seen like any kind of phenomena like that in all the fights that you've been or in the news if you've seen?
It's hard because guys like him, I'm sure exist, right? Like
Yeah.
the problem is guys who are in the UFC, guys who are in Bellator and PFL tend to associate themselves with the professional organizations, like the professional management teams, like the Iridium sports agencies, those types of agencies. No one really goes to these weird guys. And Diego Sanchez is the perfect character, I guess, for him, the perfect target. Diego Sanchez was falling on hard times, and he built a friendship. But it's really hard to find that because these weird managers exist. The problem is they exist locally and regionally,
Hmm.
and usually before their fighter gets to the big show,
Hmm.
they they find another agency, whether it's
Right.
Daniel Bernstein or Matt Dodge or whatever. They end up finding someone that's respectable because the UFC doesn't do business with these guys.
Right.
The problem is, he already went with a guy that's well established in the UFC. If he ended up talking to like a Louis Cosi or one of these guys that are just entering the UFC would just cut the fighter and move on. Like, I'm not dealing with this and move on. Problem is, a guy like Diego Sanchez, the UFC owed it to him to keep him around and you know force the negotiations with this weirdo.
Right.
Um, because Diego Sanchez is a legend of the sport, and I know deep down, the UFC has its issues. They don't take care of every fighter, but they tend to take care of the fighters that matter to them.
Hmm.
And Diego Sanchez is a Hall of Famer. He was on the Ultimate Fighter, the first Ultimate Fighter. He is such a pivotal role in the founding of the UFC. Dana White, the UFC, Sean Shelby, they all care about Diego, which is why they dealt with this guy. They
Yeah.
wouldn't deal with guys like this for everybody.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, and that is kind of the case, like in boxing. Like, if Don King wasn't Mike Tyson's manager, I don't think they would give him the time of day, especially how boisterous he is, especially how shifty he was with his business deals. I think people knew that during the fact. I'll have to ask around. But yeah, with people in boxing, that's like clearly a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Maybe Eddie Hearn. I mean, he's I guess been straight with people like for the most part, at least that's what they saw. But I guess people didn't really like how he dealt with YouTube fights. Basically, when he was I guess joining it for the first time, he saw all the traffic that YouTube attracted, but he wanted to do it his way, the right way, by removing everything that was special with YouTube and then putting things with like actual fights and I guess putting it on a streaming service that no one knew about. Triller is good now. I mean, yeah, but back then I think they were messing with the Zone and it had that streaming service had its problems. But yeah, for the most part, people have like an okay view of him. I guess they're just waiting now for the Joshua and the Fury fight to happen, but I think that'll be derailed with Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury 3. Yeah,
That's
which I'm.
another great example of manipulation there. You know, these contracts that are written have so many little loopholes. Like Deontay Wilder gets the rematch, right, because of what was in the contract. And I mean, that's what these agencies do. They their job is to do what benefits their fighters and whatnot. So, you know, it could have been the other way around. If Deontay Wilder won against Fury, Fury would be campaigning for this rematch. So, you know, it's such a shady business, but it is the fight business, and it's always been this way. It's always been, you know, shady and sketchy and manipulating contracts, manipulating different things. And you even look at what happened just a few weeks ago, like the Canelo fight almost got pulled off because of the ring size. You know, like there's so many little things like this. Like it's the day before the fight day, and they're talking about canceling the fight. Like it's,
Yeah.
you know, and that's I think that's the biggest problem. Like you don't see this in football, you don't see it in NHL, you don't see it in any other organization because they have these agencies in place, the Players Association, to have all this stuff organized to prevent stuff like this happening. You know, you don't have this many managers dealing with little things, and you know, it's shady, it's sketchy, but it's the fight business, and it's always been that way, and it always will be.
Yeah. Now that I will reply to you that maybe it just has to do with the owners of the sport. I think yeah, I mean all of this is shady, but I think a system can be controlled to a point with the right people. Yeah, as long as they're able to, I guess not manipulate, yes, reform or configure the systems at play. Pardon me. Like with like with the NFL, like when it comes to payment, I think it's like a down the line 50% cut for their players and the higher ups so that they can become millionaires. That's the same thing with NBA. And as for Dana White, I think it's only 10% or with 10% of the profits that the fighters get when it comes to annual revenue. And another nice, wholesome piece of manipulation. Tony Ferguson trying to up the checks to 75K. Uh, Apparently, that's been a thing. 75K being the regular number. I think it was like 60 G's at some point, but yeah, I guess Tony is trying to like keep the trend or made the trend of like upping fighters' checks, and I think it's weird that and kind of funny that it took a fighter with his status or any kind of status to, I guess, be enough driving force for Dana to do that. I don't know if it's going to be a one-time thing though, but that's an interesting case.
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely interesting. I hope it's something they at least do for like. You can't just say every pay per view because then only fighters will only want to fight on pay per views. Like I
Mm.
really like the idea, and it's of all fighters. Like I love Tony Ferguson, but after a 2 fight losing streak, I'm surprised he was the one that was able to get that bumped up. Like if this was Conor McGregor or John Jones or, you know, I don't even know who else, like Max Holloway or something like that, I wouldn't be surprised if they raised it up, you know.
Yeah.
But I was surprised that Tony Ferguson was the guy to do it.
Yeah.
Uh, and what's going to be interesting is people are going to be campaigning for this every fight card
Oh
because
yeah.
they know he will. Right? You saw the guy this past weekend, Bruno Silva. He was holding up a sign
Exactly.
saying 75 Ks. Uh, the problem is, you know, Dana White isn't going to make that exception for every fight card and not for every fighter, right? Like it's going to be certain fighters are going to be able to do it and certain fighters aren't. So, yeah, it was an interesting one. I'm glad they got it because fighters deserve a little boost. But
Hmm.
the problem is when you only apply it for one card, it's a little bit unfair.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna see how that how that carries. Uh, as for as for John Jones, you that you mentioned, yeah, I don't think he was able. I don't think he was able to, I guess, get much footing when it came to the heavyweight matchups against Francis Ngannou. Man, man, I don't know what. Oops. Sorry about that. About that, folks. Um, yeah, I don't know how he's going to manage that. So for people who don't know, John Jones was asking for a $30 million contract, a $50 million contract to fight Francis Ngannou. That was kind of like an insurance policy in case he got like brutally injured. But some are speculating. But yeah, but with yeah, I think there was like some attempts of manipulation, I guess, towards the media or the audience at large, on like who said what, because basically he said she said between Dana White and John Jones. What was your opinion on the debacle? Because behind the scenes, I joined Overtime Heroics MMA to report with them. But yeah, I don't think I joined you guys when that was going on. So, what was your opinion when that was happening?
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean he's got a case, right? John Jones deserves every cent of $50 million. He's super, he's the best of all time. He's the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. If you pay Conor McGregor that money, in terms of skill, John Jones deserves that money. John Jones is the better fighter than Conor McGregor. Problem is he's not the draw that Conor McGregor or Ronda Rousey or Tyson Fury. Like he doesn't draw in the audience that these guys do. And
Yeah,
he has a case for boxers that are half as good as I am are making more money. You're right, but you're not a boxer,
right.
and that's the problem. Like yes, you deserve it. No one's denying that you deserve $50 million. The problem is when you chose to compete, you chose mixed martial arts. Mixed martial arts, there was no money in that when you chose it. I was a swimmer growing up. If I ended up becoming a professional swimmer, I can't ask for the same contract that Michael Jordan has, even if I'm the best swimmer in the world.
You mean
Why?
Michael
Like
Phelps?
Michael or not? No, I mean Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky or LeBron James. Like they were different sports. They're different sports altogether.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So with mixed martial arts, there is not as much money as there is in boxing,
Yeah.
right? So if you wanted to make a $50 million payday, you should have boxed. You didn't, and you stuck with mixed martial arts. And now, yes, you deserve a raise, but you're not going to make as much money as a Tyson Fury, as an
Yeah.
Anthony Joshua, as a Deontay Wilder.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. If
Yeah.
you can bring in the revenue that those guys do, sure. But John Jones hasn't been able to do it. And I love John Jones, and I think he deserves it. If it makes sense financially for the UFC to do it, I say why not. Um, the problem is like, I can't become a secretary, go to university, become a secretary, and then expect the same amount of money as a nurse. Like,
Yeah.
I chose that field, and John Jones chose to be a mixed martial artist. He deserves a pay raise, absolutely. He's going up in weight class, deserves that. But no one's forcing him to go up a weight class. He could have stuck at 205, you know. And this should have been something that they discussed long before he made that move up to 265. He's moved up, and they never agreed on a contract, and now he's stuck in limbo. And I don't know whether it's something to do with management or what it's going to be, but I don't see John Jones making $50 million. I don't. I see him making 20 million, sure, but he can't expect to make that much in mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
can't. And like, I understand that there's issues with pay, but you know, you can't point the finger at the UFC now. Like, you chose to fight in mixed martial arts. You should have boxed. If you wanted boxing pay, you should have boxed. And if you want that amount of money, bring in the money and the revenue that Conor McGregor did.
Yeah.
When you do that, you earn $50 million.
Yeah. And yeah, and another thing to think about is MMA is really young. The sports that you talk about, that's old money sports. I mean, I think one of them just like hit. I think they all hit like at least 100 years old. So yeah, it's going to be a while until until the UFC attains that amount of money. That said, they have grown exponentially, but I think it's still young. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, I've said this a lot of times, and I said this in my podcast when it came to, I guess, getting asses in seats. You're gonna have to wait until there's new management. Until Dana White has either retired to go to Sufa boxing or just clean his hands off MMA altogether. You're going to have to wait. Yeah, you're just gonna have to wait. Uh, yeah, Scott Coker and the head promoter of PFL, they already have their fighters taken care of because uh, I've heard a tweet from I think when it's one of uh, Kamaru Usman's fighting partners going into the PFL or going to Bellator, go to where they're going to pay you. I mean, that's Kamaru Usman, the champion, admitting that, and I
But
think
here's
that's. Oh, so go ahead.
here's here's the problem with that. Like, I don't even think it's Dana White. Like, I don't. Like, you look at PFL, they're giving out $1 million to the winner of each year, like each season. Like,
Yeah,
even if John Jones were to go to PFL, he's only making $1 million a year, right? John
yeah,
Jones makes that in the UFC
mm-hmm.
per fight easily. One FC has more funding. I don't think they'd pay him $50 million.
Yeah,
You know,
mm-hmm.
I don't think the issue is necessarily Dana White.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Dana White's more vocal and just saying no, it's unrealistic, but it is unrealistic. You know, it doesn't matter if it's Dana White, Scott Coker, Chatri. It doesn't matter who's running the UFC. They might be more. You know, instead of 20 million, they might give him 25, but no one's going to give him $50 million. Like, it's not Dana's fault. Dana White gave that money to Conor McGregor because he earned it. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't necessarily Conor McGregor made who knows how much money for the UFC, right? Like, it's not necessarily Dana White.
Yeah,
You know, Dana White is vocal. Like, you know, he's more vocal than the other guys,
yeah,
you know, but I don't think it's necessarily Dana White. I really don't think that there's the money in it right now to pay John Jones that amount. Does
mm-hmm.
he deserve it based on his skill? Yes, but not based on his drawing power. And you can't pay someone more than you're going to receive in return
Yeah,
from a business standpoint. At the end of the day, the UFC is a sport or a business, you
yeah,
know? So from a business standpoint, it doesn't make sense to pay John Jones that money, whether it's Dana White, Chatri, or anybody. But you're right that the other guys would probably give him a little bit more.
mm-hmm.
But this, like you said, the sport's so new. You can't make 50. You can't give him $50 million at this point. You know, maybe 50 years down the line when
Yeah,
you know the UFC is or MMA is established and worldwide. But
yeah,
until then, you know, it
mm-hmm.
just sucks for John Jones because he does deserve the money.
Yeah.
But
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's a case of I guess rallying up the audience trying to get to his side pretty much failed, and that's kind of been the case for some fighters when they try to get fights going on. Yeah, ultimately the matchmakers are going to be the ones at hand there. So I guess to broaden the scope onto the combat sports world as a whole, there's some aspects of the combat sports world that is I guess pretty much established. I mean, there's world organizations like established rules of MMA, but I think the next step is just to uh, get the money involved. So I think that'll be another area of manipulation where that's going to, I guess, make or break MMA because that's what's, I guess, a bit of a problem with boxing. They say that with all these promotions that there's multiple belts and it's a bit boring and it's a bit hard to I guess track everything. That's why you have people like Logan Paul and Jake Paul trying to shake things up. Uh, what do you think? I guess the yeah, and you can see how that kind of manipulation is, I guess, kind of a mixed bag. How do you see this trying to play out as people are trying to, I guess, get a, a grip on things? Because ultimately, all these manipulation tactics that they're trying to accept in order to get eyes on. Yeah, it's just trying to keep boxing alive. But how do you think it's going to affect the future of combat sports and with boxing?
yeah, I'm not really like. First off, the Logan and Jake Paul thing is such an interesting thing because what they're doing it seems so wrong for the average fighter. Like this goes back to the John Jones thing. Like
Mhm.
when you have a guy who's fought his entire life, dedicated himself to the craft, making a fifth of Jake Paul, it's it sucks.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, like these guys are bringing in more revenue. Like
Mhm.
if I'm a business owner and I have a guy who's worked for me for 25 years, but he's only bringing me in, 40 grand in revenue a year, but I have a brand new guy bringing me in $400,000 a year. Like, who's going to get paid more? The guy
Mhm.
who brings in more money. And, the boxing world right now, but what's weird to me is people think boxing is dead, but it's bringing in more money than MMA. Like,
Yes. Oh man, it's like on its worst day, it's doing better than MMA.
it's true. Like Canelo makes more money than like the entire UFC roster minus the champion. But uh,
Oh, that's
so
depressing.
it's it's insane. Boxing is alive. Boxing as well. It just there's competition now. There wasn't
Mm,
competition before, right? People only watched boxing. Anyone that was interested in combat sports would watch boxing. It was
mm,
boxing or wrestling. If
yeah.
you weren't, educated on what real martial arts was, but I'm talking WWE, not college wrestling, by the way.
Right, right, right. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but like now it's you've got people now watching MMA and people watching boxing. So there's competition. It's not dead. Boxing is more alive than ever. Go to Mexico. Go to Mexico, ask someone on the street, like guarantee you they know who Canelo is before Yair Rodriguez. Like guaranteed. Boxing is not dead. Boxing is very alive. It's just where you go, where you happen to go, and like people know who Klitschko's are.
Yeah.
Go to the like, it's such a weird thing, and like the Jake Paul and Logan Paul is another great example of these two guys coming in and manipulating the whole boxing game. But you know what? Like, good for them. They're exploiting something that boxing wasn't doing it right, clearly, because they were not bringing in 12, 13, 14, 15 year olds. You
Mm-hmm.
know who's watching my you know who's watching Jake and Logan Paul? My
Mm.
12-year-old brother. My 12-year-old brother called me, asking me who Floyd Mayweather was, and he
Mm.
thinks that Logan Paul is going to knock out Floyd Mayweather.
All right.
Right? Like he's not. we all know that. Anyone who understands martial arts knows that that's not happening. But my 12-year-old brother is going to be watching that fight.
Mm.
Never in the history of like combat sports has anyone been able to do that. Logan Paul and Jake Paul have done that. So congratulations to them. I think what they're doing is unbelievable.
Yep.
It sucks for regular combat sports athletes, but it sucks for the UFC and it sucks for the WBC, WBO, all these organizations who can't do it. But good for these guys. They're killing it. They're crushing it. And I wish I came up with that. I wish I was a TikToker and just came up with the idea of boxing a celebrity and making $100 million.
Man.
You know,
Oh yeah. Funny enough, there was like this joke app called Rumble. Do you remember that whole controversy behind that?
no.
No, it's basically like you can challenge anyone to a fight with the Rumble app and just type it in and just say, "Yeah, we're gonna go fight," and just share it on social media. Yeah, I think it's funny that there's like a little there's a little bit of essence from that in here, so that's like a little bit funny. Now, for I guess as a long term plan, I guess you're trying to poke at it and see what works. Yeah, and you said boxing's alive. But now, I guess what will it be alive with? Like, what are they going to use to like spruce it up? Uh, if they're going to, I guess, grab, I guess, get some pointers from the Paul brothers, or at least learn like what systems make them tick, or allow them to bring assets to seats in boxing. I guess how they're going to carry that into, I guess, 10, 20 years, 20 years from now, do you think it'll stick with them?
I think promotion is the biggest difference between US MMA and boxing and all these other things. Like
Hmm.
and the Jake Pauls, I'm putting them in their own category, Jake and Logan Paul, right? Like celebrity combat. These guys, no matter what they do, these guys could play a game of cricket and they're going to bring in more views than anything else. Like it doesn't matter what these guys do.
Hmm.
because they promote themselves. They promote themselves unlike anybody else because they already have that promotion.
Yeah.
They have these social channels with millions and millions of people.
Hmm.
John Jones doesn't have that. The UFC doesn't, to an extent, have that. But I really think that one of the biggest differences between uh, the Paul brothers and all these other promotions is how they promote themselves, right?
Hmm.
Like, it's crazy that they're reaching the market that they're reaching. Boxing and combat sports for the longest time only targeted males above the
Hmm.
age of 19, right? So that's like even that's quite a big group of people, but there's so like what about the kids? What about women? Until the UFC decided to open up to women mixed martial artists, it was such a niche market of us, guys who
Hmm.
followed it.
Yeah.
Now it's growing. And what Jake and Logan Paul are doing are expanding that even bigger. And I think it's actually going to benefit boxing because what's going to happen now is Jake and Logan Paul are going to be fighting guys like Floyd Mayweather. Problem is Floyd Mayweather's retired, but if they were to fight a guy like Canelo, people would start watching Canelo because they'd be like, "Who the heck is this guy?"
Yeah.
We know who he is, but like my brother will start watching Canelo. He's 12, and he's like, "Oh, this is the best boxer in the world because he just beat Logan Paul." And so I really do think that this is amazing for combat sports in general, especially boxing. And I know the UFC shut it down and was like, we don't want the Paul brothers. I think that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do, and it's like look what Conor McGregor was able to do. Logan Paul and Jake Paul could do the exact same thing Conor did for the UFC, guaranteed.
I
You
can
know,
see that. Yeah, if
see,
they can take it seriously and not get hurt. But yeah, yeah, I
Brock
can
Lesnar.
probably take you up on that. Yeah.
Look at Brock Lesnar. Well, you know what Brock Lesnar did for the UFC was massive. So
Hmm.
why can't I know Logan Paul isn't quite at his level, but if they could get Logan Paul to fight, I don't know, some random middleweight, Andreas
Hmm.
Michailidis or whatever, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Right?
Hmm.
Like it's only going to bring in views and bring in views to that entire card and then to the entire UFC. And then you're going to be able to put on super fights, cross promotions. Like it's huge for the UFC.
Hmm.
Like Logan Paul and Jake Paul. Now I know we're down the Logan Paul and Jake Paul rabbit hole, but I've I've never had an issue with what they were doing. I have an
Hmm.
issue with like stealing Floyd Mayweather's hat and stuff, but
Yeah, that was
no
weird.
issue no issue with them boxing or them fighting. I think it's amazing what they're doing and they're taking it seriously and they're doing a good job of it.
Yeah.
So, and I really do think it would be huge for the UFC. And if John Jones wants Jake Paul money, they got to bring in Jake Paul.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So, briefly said. So, I don't. Yeah, I know you're a little bit a long time. So, I guess any final thoughts that you want to I guess get off your chest. I know you went a little bit about all that. I think I might save this for like a preview for another thing. So, talk about like character or theatrics in the fighting world. But yeah. Yeah. I guess my final thought on that is uh, I think manipulation will be here to stay. I mean, it's part of marketing. It's part of, I guess, theater. That's how you want to promote yourself. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of, I guess, what will be the next evolution? What will be here to stay? Why are we doing this? And I think yeah, as we're, I guess, trying to, I guess, bridge the gap as we're trying to understand like more about, I guess, what is out there when it comes to characters. As MMA is expanding, you're going to see a lot of things like this happen. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how like the YouTubers of the world and how the old guards of the world will collide and see how they interact and see what manipulations can happen from there. So yeah, that's just my final thought.
Yeah, I guess to add to that, I mean, like you said, manipulation. In at the end of the day, this is a business, right?
Hmm.
All sports, all these promotions, whether it's NFL, NHL, UFC, they're all ultimately a business. They run on money, and anytime money's involved, there's going to be manipulation of contracts, manipulation of player wages, and et cetera, et cetera. There's always going to be a way for the powers at the top to make more money. It's how it always has been. It's how it always will be. And Ideally, that's not going to be the case, and fighters are going to make more. But in order for fighters to make more, the promotion's going to have to make more. That gap is always going to be there, the 10% or whatever. That's not going to go away.
All
So
right.
in order for the UFC to pay their athletes more, they're going to have to make more. So, for like the likes of John Jones, make the UFC more money and he'll make more money. Guys like Joshua Fabia, like those guys are going to exist. Um, and we just gotta, those guys exist out there, and it sucks. And he's going to manipulate Diego Sanchez into helping him make more money and everything. And it's unfortunate. It sucks, but it's part of the fight game, and it's part of business. And it's unfortunate, but like you said, it's here to stay. And hopefully, as a fan of the sport and as a fan of a lot of the fighters, I hope that they can find a way for the UFC to make more money so they can pay the fighters more, because the fighters are the ones that are bringing us to the seats and watching the events and paying for pay-per-views.
Absolutely. And with that, I'd like to close it there. Thank you so much, Sergio, for your insight. And please, anything that you'd like to promote or where people can find you.
Yeah, if you can just check us out at Fighter Path MMA. We're a website, small team, Fighter Path MMA. Yeah, for Fighter Path MMA on Instagram and Twitter, fighterpath.com. I also work for Cage Side Press and Overtime Heroics, as well as MMAprospects.com. So yeah, I work for a few different places, but check us out at Fighter Path MMA, and you can link to all the other spots from there.
And as for me, I am Dante Analysis. You could find me on Twitter at the Dante Man on Twitter, and you can find me Dante Analysis on Instagram. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in for the fighting roundtable. We will see you next time. Zooming out.